Hi, I am going to take a little trip down some Canadian history and maybe some American history. Um, I wrote a book. This is like a mock-up of the cover. This was the original picture. That's my father on the Sault Ste. Marie ship during World War II. And he served in the Royal Canadian Navy. And the story I want to share today is, oh, but before we get to that story, I'm going to show you, I've got letters, piles of letters. There's like a whole bunch of them from servicemen from America and Canada for this project. And they're, for the most part, they're written from the individual mouths of these people who serve. Now, you must take into consideration that when I received these, some of these people were probably already in their 70s and 80s. So we're going by their memory. And one of the unique things, like my father, Russ Dembisky, never spoke about the war ever, ever. The only thing he would talk about was shore leave and the mascots. So when I found that picture with the dog, I says, "Oh, you had a dog on the ship." He says, "Oh yeah." And apparently they were contraband in at least in the Canadian Navy, and they were contraband and they were not allowed in these units, but they were there anyway because they were kind of like a taste of home. And the one thing that was so unique about these stories is that in order to tell these stories, the service guys who did not want to talk about the war had to talk about the environment and what it was like on the ship or wherever they served to explain the uniqueness of the mascot. So we're going to jump into Bob Dick's story, and he served on the HMCS Pictou in the Canadian Navy. And he sent me two pictures. This is Ginny, and Ginny is a monkey. And then he sent me Whiskey, a dog. So um, I kind of re-edited some of these letters. And again, there may be some historical content that may not be quite there, but overall you get the gist of it, and most of it is pretty correct. So here's Bob Dick's from Bob Dick's mouth. We had three mascots on one time aboard the HMCS Pictou. The first was a black and white, wired-haired, we named Whiskey, which was this little puppy here. And the second to come aboard was a small gray monkey named Ginny. Both belonged to the communications mess. The third mascot belonged to the PO's mess and was a small brown dog named Rum. So we had three liquors, whiskey, gin, and rum. Life for Whiskey was a lazy one. He ate, slept, and moved around when it was calm enough, but that was all. Ginny, on the other hand, was a natural for finding her way around the ship. We slept at sea with our clothes on in the hammocks, and one would usually find her in a hammock either around the neck or down by your ankles. It was much warmer there. I remember one morning knowing that duty calls for animals as well as sailors, thinking she wasn't about to do it in my hammock. So I gave her a lift and told her to move, but didn't follow her whereabouts. I dozed off again, only to be awakened by a flood from above. Such was life. Being a sparker, Ginny used to visit the wireless cabin. One time, the transmitter was being turned up while the front panel was off. She perched on the wireless operator, Roy's shoulders, moved around, and her tail brushed against a large tuning condenser. Much to her surprise, she received a good belt of DC current, causing her to lose all the hair on her tail. She went flying out of the porthole, followed by a whiff of smoke. It took her a few days before she would come visit again. We would take Ginny to the pubs in Ireland to meet the locals and have a sip of beer. One day, a buffer was about to kill her because she got into his carton of American cigarettes, tearing them and spreading them across the mess. It took some time to cool him down. Ginny kept a lot cleaner than the rest of us at sea. At least she got to bath up in the heads in the washroom. After being soaped up, rinsed, and dried, she could be brought down to the mess for warmth. Yes, she could flick the dandruff off your head while you were asleep. Although she'd eat the same hair, we get a little picky about that. Once in Tobermory, Scotland, when we went ashore in the lifeboat and brought her some branches of tree to make her feel at home, we put them in a hammock locker, but it was put to little use. I guess she was domesticated by then. Ginny was often invited to the captain's cabin when he had guests on the board the ship when he was in harbor. The problem was, as the captain and his guests got a few drinks in them, they got her a little excited, and soon a rush call would be put through to the mess to come and get her. I don't know who cleaned up after her, but it wasn't me. I can't remember if Whiskey was ever taken for a walk by one of us, but she did get the chance to stretch her legs on the jetty when in harbor. Rum was taken care of by the POs. How did we get Ginny? Well, Roy had an uncle who was in the Merchant Navy and had brought her from Africa to Liverpool. We were there for new depth charges, and after a visit to his house, we brought her back to our ship. On a trip sometime later, we were rammed by a merchant ship in a fog and lost our stern. We acquired some leave after getting into St. John's and dry dock, which is, tying up the ship. And Roy and I brought her back to Halifax via HMCS Raccoon, then home by rail to Toronto. Roy went to Vancouver, BC, and Ginny was donated to the zoo at Stanley Park. On the way home by rail, she scared a few at times when she was found visiting the carriage, but the children sure loved her. Ginny was quite human in many respects. She caused a lot of laughs, grief, but she's the one I will remember as part of our life on board a Corvette. I don't know what happened to Whiskey and Rum. I was drafted off to another ship once my leave was up. HMCS Dundas had what I believe was a bulldog on board when I was in Lunenburg. I don't know how true this story was, but I heard that the bulldog upset a team of oxen pulling a load while on the jetty. The oxen weren't the same after that, and the skipper was handed a pill. There was well-known black and white Newfoundland dog that used to stretch itself on the foot of the gangplank on the jetty of HMCS Greenwich, a Royal Navy ship, when it was in the south side of St. John's Harbor. She was said to have saved some lives at sea. So that's the story of Whiskey and Ginny. And thanks to Bob Dick, I don't have any clue. These men and women that wrote me these stories, I don't know where they are today, but I figured it was important to use this platform to kind of like solidify their stories even further than this book did. So thank you for listening to this. And yeah, I am so grateful to have had the trust placed in me for these servicemen to share their stories.